recording. Good to go.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Will Moss. I am the CEO of HBCU Connect.com. And this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you are from, we are pleased to present the Microsoft Azure hardware architecture and cloud hardware and infrastructure engineering teams. This will be a great opportunity for you to learn more of not only about Microsoft, but about these specific hiring organizations, what they do. You'll get to meet the team. You'll get to engage and ask questions. So without further ado, let me go ahead and present to you our agenda. But a quick housekeeping note, as you can see here, hopefully you can see my slides. But please make sure to keep yourself muted during the event so that we can really focus in on the conversation and the information that is being shared by the Microsoft presenters. And then also, so that we can minimize distractions, please keep your video off. However, during the event, I'm going to welcome you to actually leverage the chat feature in Teams to not only introduce yourself, so you might want to introduce who you are, where you're from, maybe your background, where you maybe went to school, whatever HBCUs are represented or non-HBCUs as well. You can drop your LinkedIn profile from a networking perspective in the chat. And I'm also going to encourage the Microsoft team members that include recruiters and hiring managers and representatives of AHA and CHIE that are here to present this evening. I'm going to recommend or encourage the Microsoft team to engage with the candidates in the chat as well, because this is a live event. And I don't want anyone to feel like we're just watching a video or watching, a show and we can't engage. So the value of this for you candidates that are, here live is that you can engage. All right. So with that being said, like I said, we'll be recording this event. Get started. Let me go over the agenda real quick so everybody knows what we're going to cover this evening and what the opportunities or, when the opportunities are for our panel discussion and our Q&A. First of all, I'll give you a quick welcome from myself, a little bit of background on HBCU Connect and our partnership with Microsoft. Then I will introduce our two keynote speakers that are representing AHA and CHIE in those groups respectively. Then we will get to meet the panelists or team members that have graciously volunteered their time to share not only what it is that they do on their particular team, but a little bit about themselves, their background, so that you can understand how you may have followed a similar path or have a similar background and how you might be able to land a position with Microsoft. So I'll introduce each panelist, give you a little bit of context on who you are speaking to, who you'll be able to ask questions to, and then we will go into a panel discussion where I have some questions queued up to ask each of our team members to give you all as candidates a better idea of the Microsoft culture, a better idea of what it is like to work at Microsoft, a better idea of Microsoft and the importance around diversity and people, being themselves at work and the Microsoft culture. So we'll cover those questions that I have for the panel discussion. Then we will have the opportunity for a live Q&A. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean on you all as candidates to ask some of the questions that you would like to ask of the team in a panel discussion format. And the way you can do that is you can drop those questions in the chat, and then I will read those questions off to our panelists. All right. So once we have that panel discussion, live Q&A, then we will end the event by giving you guys the next steps. So if you are interested in potentially interviewing with either the AHA team or the CHIE team there within Microsoft, you will know what those next steps are. All right. So without further ado, let me go ahead and jump into the show. So quick introduction of myself. Like I said, my name is Will Moss. I'm the CEO of HBCU Connect. Our organization has been around since 1999, helping students and graduates of HBCUs or historically Black colleges and universities get connected not only to each other, but to opportunities. And about 9 or 10 years ago, we forged a relationship with Microsoft, where Microsoft started posting job opportunities on HBCUconnect.com. Microsoft started accessing our resume database and started to move the needle on people finding out about career opportunities with Microsoft from our website. But Microsoft is a huge company. They get, thousands, if not millions of people that want to work there and submit their resumes online, as you guys might imagine. And so one of the brilliant folks that I worked with early on at Microsoft came to me and said, "Hey, Will, how do we solve this problem to make sure that the candidates from HBCU Connect get a good look from the hiring managers and the recruiters here at Microsoft? And you guys solved that problem. So they put the ball in our court, and we came up with the idea of hosting after work networking sessions for professionals, African-American professionals, primarily Latinx professionals as well. But having these after work networking events to introduce our candidates to the recruiters, hiring managers, and team members from Microsoft. And we started having these events in different parts of the country, Dallas, Houston, Atlanta, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, all the way up to New York. We started having these events, and Microsoft started to hire members of HBCU Connect from these events. So once COVID-19 hit, kudos to Microsoft. We didn't stop the train. We basically kept going and started to host these events. Instead of physically, we started to host these events online. And the great news is that from these events, our members continue to be hired by Microsoft. So thank you, Microsoft, for this opportunity, for sharing your opportunities with our members. And to our members and to our candidates that have joined us, welcome. The opportunity here for you is not only for you to learn more about Microsoft, also to learn more about the 2 hiring teams that have sponsored this event, for you to ask questions about these hiring teams. What, how do your skills maybe fit into the opportunities that are available? You'll meet some of the team members. You'll understand their background. It'll allow you to come up with more questions that you can ask and engage on. But also the opportunity is for you to potentially land an interview and potentially be hired from this event. So this is an intentional event. It's not just a branding event. This is a real opportunity. All right, so with that being said, wanted to set the stage, but allow me to pass it on to our first keynote speaker, who is Renaud Dessa, who's Corporate Vice President, Cloud Hardware and Infrastructure Engineering Team. So Renaud, if you're ready.
And you're muted.
Yeah, just got off mute. Thank you, Will, and thank you for the multi-year partnership between Microsoft and HBCU Connect. Really appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Very excited and glad to be part of this virtual hiring event. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Corporate Vice President of the Cloud Hardware and Infrastructure Engineering Team, otherwise known as CHIE. I'm originally from Goa. It's a small beach kind of state in India. And today what I do is I just basically doing a bi-coastal living between actually the West Coast and the East Coast. So I split my time between Washington, D.C. on the East Coast and Redmond, Washington on the West Coast. On the background, coming from an engineering background, and you can kind of see the colleges I went through over there. I've been in the industry for about 3 decades now. It kind of dates me, but quite some time. And I joined Microsoft about 3 years ago. Really enjoying every minute of it. It's exciting work. It's a great culture, a lot of innovation, and I'll talk about that a little bit more if we can move on to the next slide, Will. Okay, so with what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out at Microsoft and kind of zoom in to kind of the organizations, CHIE and AHA organizations. And Steve will talk about the AHA organization. So within Microsoft, there's a group called Microsoft Azure, and this is the Microsoft Cloud group. And what we do is we build the world's computer, right? We look at the cloud, all the data centers that spread across the globe as one big computer that that people can use. And as you build this world's computer, there are a few things we kind of prioritize on. It has to be productive, just like using the computer for productivity. Trusted with your data, your applications. It has to be trusted. That also be flexible in terms of the cloud can extend from the cloud to your desktop and kind of extends. And intelligent, it has to work for you. So we kind of take pride in the fact that we're building this world's computer, and it's a big computer spread across the globe. Okay, zooming in a little bit on the next slide. Within Microsoft, there is a group that's dedicated to building the hardware systems and infrastructure. And this is OSSI. It's called OSSI as the acronym. So if you look at the cloud or the Microsoft Azure, it's made of hardware, it's made of software, networking, and services. So what Aussie does is primarily focuses on the hardware aspect of it, working very closely with the software groups, the networking groups, as well as these services, which eventually the customers do use. And if I click down into the Aussie slide, one more slide down here, you can kind of see the mission of Aussie. It's, as I said, it's the hardware group, and so it's powering the world's computer with the most advanced hardware systems and infrastructure. That's a very, it's a great mission, and along with that, it's about building a very reliable, scalable, and a very secure, computer or hardware systems that is actually going towards solving some global and really, really complex problems. And as we build these, the innovation is not just for today, but it's for today and tomorrow, thinking about what's coming up next. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of technology development. There are some are incremental innovations, some are some really revolutionary innovations. And you might have seen some of this in the press with terms of immersive cooling, the servers in the liquid, and completely immersed in liquid. It's just exciting to see. And when we do this, we kind of obviously have to, being part of the global, being a global citizen here, building this in a very sustainable way in terms of not just how we build it, but how we operate the hardware, and how we manage the hardware, and the services that are provided by the Azure cloud. Now, all of this eventually comes into, the main purpose, which is empowering and delighting our customers and partners to use the Microsoft Azure cloud. Okay, so now if I zoom in a little bit more, I'll talk about the organization I lead, which is the Cloud Hardware and Infrastructure Engineering Organization, and I'll go into a little more depth. In this section here. Click down a little bit here. So you can see the mission kind of click down from the Aussie mission. So what my team does is builds all the hardware systems. So we work very closely with the AHA team. That means architecture, we develop it, we design it, we manufacture it, and then we deploy the systems that we build into the data centers that make up this computer, the world's computer, and then we manage the hardware. So it's kind of an end-to-end life cycle from a development perspective. So as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of talent and different skill sets that are needed to build this across this life cycle. Look, there's software engineers that are involved. There's hardware engineers, electrical engineers, thermal engineers, mechanical engineers, program managers. So it kind of takes quite a big team behind it to actually go ahead and build these different systems that are optimized for what the customer needs. And all of this, while that's kind of a technical or sort of view of it, or a business kind of view of it, I do want to emphasize the culture aspect of it, of the organization. All of that it can only work with a great culture. And the tone is set all the way from Satya, who leads Microsoft, who's the CEO of Microsoft, and it percolates all the way through the organization, right? Very, very, very passionate about a growth mindset, and the desire to make a difference, be very diverse and inclusive in all our conversations, the perspectives that we bring to the table. You can kind of see the values focusing on respect, integrity, and accountability as being very key. And then there's focus on the leadership and the manager expectations that kind of lead the teams, manage the projects to drive a great culture to work within. And last but not least is the diversity and inclusion capabilities, which is just practice awareness, being self-aware. It's an area I myself am growing, continuing to grow, exercise curiosity, and then demonstrate courage. And there's quite a bit of click downs behind this. I just want to give a very sort of a high level view of it. And then talking about CHIE, as I mentioned, we're looking for talent in many different areas: hardware, software, and even and program managers. And within that, those domains, like firmware, software developers, tester, software developers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, technical program managers, project managers. So as you can imagine, the the skill set that we're looking for is quite varied, and you'll get the opportunity to kind of be part of this exciting, exciting journey of where we're building hardware, and you'll kind of look at it all the way through its life cycle. A little bit about where we are today as an organization. You can kind of see here by the blue circles here, kind of where we are primarily located at this point in time. We just recently opened up in Austin, and we are looking to actually kind of grow further in Washington, D.C. and Portland as two other areas that we're looking at. Not sort of build sites there, but those are other areas that we are also considering at this point in time. And having said that, given being in the pandemic, there's quite all of us are right now working virtual. But even when we come back into this hybrid environment, there's still about, I would say, 10% of the organization that is actually working remote, which is not at any site. So quite flexible, basically looking for some talent to join the fun. And with that, I will hand it off to Steve, unless there are any questions.
Actually, I would love to follow up with a couple of questions for you.
Go ahead.
And what I like to do is get a little bit of the story of the person as well. So, like, what was your path to Microsoft? How did you end up getting your foot in the door at Microsoft?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I joined Microsoft about a little over 3 years ago now. Technology has always excited me, and being on the ground floor of technology is also more exciting because it's a path that's not been. It's a path that you will kind of contribute to to kind of set, and the cloud, the hardware in the cloud space is, I would say, just on the ground floor at this point in time. There's quite a bit of innovation. There's quite a bit of opportunity that is there. And so that that excites me, and then obviously, and then the other piece of it was the culture at Microsoft. I read about it from the outside, but I can tell you, going now from the inside, it's it's awesome, right? It is work, but it's fun at work too. So it's kind of has both the benefit, both of it together.
So, having been at Microsoft for a while now, what is it that you like most about working there at Microsoft?
I would say the people. There's a lot of smart people at Microsoft, a lot of collaboration. I get to learn a lot. I get to contribute. It's the people, is what I would say.
Excellent. That's been a reoccurring theme throughout lots of events that we've hosted with Microsoft. So, Ronald, let me thank you for being one of our keynotes. And if you would, I'll ask you to hang on for our panel discussion a little bit later.
Absolutely.
Sound good? Excellent. So let me go ahead and introduce our next keynote speaker, who is representing AHA, or the Azure Hardware Architecture Team, Steve Scott, who is a Corporate Vice President of the Azure Hardware Architecture Team. So Steve, if you're ready.
All right, fantastic. Thanks. And thanks, Ronaldo, as well for that intro, because you covered a lot of stuff that I won't have to cover now. So hi, everyone. I am super glad to be here. This is my first HBCU Connect event, and I would love to find some great people to join our team. A little bit of my background: I grew up in a fairly small town in central Wisconsin. Started playing around with computers in high school, which were actually a novel thing back when I was in high school. The kids at our high school actually knew more than the teachers about computers. But I ended up going straight to my state university, never even applied anywhere else. And while I was there, I interned a couple times. Can't suggest that strongly enough. In my case, it was at Bell Labs outside of Chicago. And then I did 2 summers as an intern in grad school at Cray Research. Cray Research was the company that was synonymous with supercomputing, kind of built the supercomputing industry. And I landed there after school, looked at a bunch of places, and went back there. I was working in a town of 13,000 people, a little tiny place in western Wisconsin. Unfortunately, that's where Seymour Cray grew up, and he founded the company there. So not too much to do other than focus on work. But it was super exciting work, building the fastest computers in the world. Great culture there as well. It was a fast-moving industry, lots of changes. Cray was bought and then spun out again. And I actually became the CTO of CRE back in 2004. So from intern to CTO, and then
Looks like we may have an internet issue. Steve, I don't know if you can hear me, but on my end, your internet just froze.
Yeah, he's frozen a bit. Let's just give him a second. Maybe we'll get back quick. There, he's leaving. He's probably coming back.
Okay, no problem. So while we wait for Steve, maybe what we okay, there you are.
There it
Perfect.
is.
Perfect.
all right, that was suboptimal. Sorry about that. Anyway, so yeah, and then I stayed at Cray my whole career I did a 3-year detour at NVIDIA and Google, and then in 2019, HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprises, bought Cray, and after a while, decided that was not the best place to be, and joined Microsoft in about 15 months ago, in the spring of 2020, right during the pandemic. So haven't actually met anybody in person yet. I'm pretty sure you exist, Ronald, but I haven't actually met you. The great thing here is that a lot of building supercomputers translates to Microsoft and Azure. Azure has incredible scale, and we're looking at solving some of the world's toughest problems. So the problems are pretty similar, and the industry momentum is moving more and more to the cloud. It is absolutely the best problems and have a big impact on the world. Just the ambition that the cloud companies have, the scale, the resources that we have to bring to bear, and the opportunity to optimize across layers, everywhere from silicon up to end services. It's really just pretty staggering. So let me talk a little bit about what my group does at Microsoft. So go ahead to the next slide. So Renaud told you all about Azure and about Ozzy. The organization I lead is really focused on the long-term evolution of our cloud hardware. Renaud's organization does all the real work, and we get to think about what to build next. So we kind of do pathfinding. We actually do some engineering as well, and a couple of the folks from my org that you'll see a little bit later are up to their eyeballs in doing real engineering work. But what we try to do in AHA is understand the technology trends and the industry and market dynamics and the needs of both of our internal workloads and the external workloads, and where are their gaps, where are there problems to be solved, where are there opportunities, and then use that understanding to architect innovative systems and components and such to meet our future needs. So we're working on lots of different projects they're all really pretty exciting. Maybe the thing that most of the people in my org are working on that's perhaps the most revolutionary is future AI systems. We're working on some things that are just incredibly powerful compared to anything on the planet today. And it's an exciting area because there's co-design of the AI algorithms and the data science and the computer architecture, all of those mixing together, and it's moving really, really fast. So as fast as normal computing is getting, the AI capabilities are rising even faster, and the architectures are changing. We've got a long way to go. The human brain is still over 1 million times more efficient today than the most powerful computers at neural processing. So a super exciting area. We're also doing things like looking at immersion cooling. The second picture here is someone kind of pulling a circuit board out of a Florida bath. We're actually dunking the computers into fluid that's non-conductive fluid to cool it more effectively, because computers are getting hot, processors are getting hotter and hotter. So can we also make them more reliable and more energy efficient by immersion cooling? We're looking at how we can re-architect our data centers to be more flexible and dynamically share resources to use when you use hardware. You kind of want to be able to use it as effectively as possible. We've got a group in my org that's thinking about how do we make our hardware more secure. prevent hacking, but also provide something we call confidential computing, which is a guarantee that we can give our customers that you can put your computing and your data into Azure, and not even Microsoft will be able to access that data. If we had a rogue employee, no way for them to access the data, even though it's running in our infrastructure. So really important in getting people to be comfortable moving more to the cloud. We're also building, we've got a group that's building performance modeling and simulation capability, and then using that to try to understand our critical workloads better and architect more efficient, higher performing computing systems. So lots of different areas, things going on. And it's fun because we just get to think about the future, think about the key problems, and then try to make some headway. And so next slide, last thing I want to talk about is a little bit about culture. And I can't agree more with the things that Ronald was saying about the culture inside Microsoft as a whole. I love our senior management team, that they care about their employees, they care about the culture inside the company, they care about how our products impact the rest of the world. It's great. Inside AHA, the work is great, but we try to have a little fun, try to build a great team culture as well. This isn't easy to do during a pandemic when we're all working from home. Like I said, I've been here 15 months and I haven't spent a single day in the office. So it's all just staring at faces on screens. But we try to do a lot of things to build a culture, build a sense of camaraderie. We do a lot of communication with the team. We've got newsletters, we've got regular group sync ups. We do online social events. We've got a learning series for people to share work-related stuff, but also personal-related stuff. I just found out recently that my chief of staff is a beekeeper, and she had a great session where she was talking about the crazy world of keeping bees. Every once in a while she shows up with some part of her face swollen from getting stung. But people share their interests, carpentry, cooking, outdoor stuff, whatever, and try to we try to keep in sync that way. We've got a kudos program for recognizing and trying to thank people, make sure that we show appreciation for what folks are doing. We've tried, given this pandemic, to have some time where people aren't constantly sitting in front of a screen in meetings. So we do these meeting-free Fridays to provide a little time for people to either get some stuff done, get off the screen, maybe take some time off. And we try to provide lots of opportunities for feedback as well. And then lastly, I guess, just trying to be as flexible as we can to accommodate people's schedules in this work-life smearing together world that we're living in. And I can say personally, like, I feel like I've got a great Microsoft family, even though I haven't met anybody, most of my team. When I joined, the culture was just super welcoming. Everyone wanted to help, get me up to speed. People are friendly and supportive, and I really appreciate that. I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into the office and spending some more time, with my team and the wider Aussie and Azure teams. And then last slide, same sort of global presence slide that Ronald showed. And what you can see is that we're mostly in the US. Our main campuses for my group, the main centers are in Redmond, the Seattle area, Silicon Valley, Austin, and Portland. But I'm a real believer that people can be effective anywhere. The last year has definitely taught us that. So we've got people that are working remote as well, and we're pretty committed to making a hybrid workplace work in the future. A workplace that I would love to see some of y'all join. So with that, I'll stop and move on to the next speaker.
For sure, Steve. Can I ask a couple of follow-up questions?
You bet.
So for you, what would you say is what you like most so far working at Microsoft?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to say the same thing Ronald said, that I like the culture. I like that both within my team and the team that Ronald and I are both part of, the leadership team for Aussie, there's a real sense of kind of camaraderie and family. But the other thing is just the opportunity. I loved working on supercomputing, but Cray was a pretty small company. Then I became part of HPE, a much bigger company, but kind of a boring company. Love you, HPE, but you're a little boring. The opportunity that we've got at Microsoft, just the scale is astounding. the trajectory that we're on, the impact we can have on the world. And it's kind of exciting to be part of an organization that has that ability, to impact the world and make it a better place.
So before I let you go, when you speak to scale, how large roughly in employees or team sizes is AHA and CHIE?
Yeah, well, so CHIE is bigger, as I don't know, you're around 1,500 people or so, give or take. I don't know. The architecture group is around maybe 250, going on 300 though. We're all growing at a pretty high rate. The crazy thing is that as fast as we're growing, we're constantly feeling like we're under-resourced because our ambitions are bigger than our headcount. Yeah, growing pretty quickly.
Love it. So I've got a rapid fire question for both you and Ronald before we move on and I introduce our panelists. And that is off the top of your head, when you think about the growth that AHA and CHIE are going to experience around hiring new employees and areas where you're going to be hiring new employees, off the top of your head, what type of talent or growth in what areas do you see?
Oh boy! Well, I can go as long as I'm talking. For me, our AI group is the biggest. So people that have, and that's the one area where we're hiring software people as well as hardware people. So anyone that's like mathematically inclined or a programmer that has interest in AI, there's potential there.
Okay.
Other than that, it's really kind of multiple hardware disciplines. We're hiring mechanical and thermal type people. We're hiring performance analysts, traditional computer architecture, processor people, memory system people, and security. So kind of across the gamut.
Love it. Ronald.
So, I mean, to some extent, a very similar answer. One of the benefits within CHIE is that we extend across a larger part of the hardware development lifecycle. So along those, so you can just imagine we are hiring, from a hardware engineering perspective, there's electrical, mechanical, industrial, thermal, and power engineers. Then we're hiring manufacturing engineers that are focused on quality and the manufacturing reliability and so forth engineers. And then software engineers is another area that it's quite a big team within, that does telemetry, diagnostics, as well as some of the firmware support that we have. And then and there's another function also that from skill set provides, I would kind of bucket it under technical program management. To do all this work, we need talent that can kind of coordinate this, make sure things are coming on schedule, make sure, and just coordinate the work that's going on.
Excellent.
So lots of different skill sets we're looking for.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to thank both of you guys for being our keynotes, and I'll ask you to hang on for our panel discussion after I introduce our panelists. And so to all of our candidates, if you got questions for Ronald or Steve, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, and Ronald and Steve, I'll ask you to keep an eye on the chat if you can answer some of those questions that may come up. Also, man, I really love, we do a lot of events with a lot of different companies, and I always get a smile on my face because Microsoft doesn't just talk the talk, they walk the walk. Microsoft has been partnering with us every single year since the very first engagement that we had like 9 or 10 years ago. Diversity is important to Microsoft, and the people that come, so there's this recurring theme of people liking who they work with, and people being one of the #1 reasons they stay at Microsoft or they enjoy working at Microsoft. So I smile at that, and I smile back at the smiling faces that I see every time we do these events with Microsoft. So love it. All right, so with that, let me introduce our next panelist. And so to each of our panelists, I'd like to introduce them or allow them to introduce themselves. And our first panelist I'd like to introduce is Zara Lack, who is a Principal Engineering Manager within AHA. So Zara, if you're ready.
Thanks, Will, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. As Will said, my name is Zara Lack. Super happy to be here. Thanks for the opportunity, to get to know each other. I'm a Principal Engineering Manager, which is a technical leadership role responsible for designing high-performance AI platforms, mainly focusing on the hardware side. And I work very closely with our software leads, our physical design leads, all the way to infrastructure design and testing leads. So there are a lot of collaborations in our organization, working under Steve's team. I'm originally from Tehran, Iran. For those of you who haven't heard of the country, it's a beautiful country in Middle East. Going through some rough times right now, unfortunately, but it's amazing. Hopefully when the situation gets settled, I recommend everybody to visit. I did my undergrad in Amir Kabir University in Tehran. And it was a school, the computer engineering program had like 50%, almost 50% female and 50% male students, which was not uncommon, and it was not uncomfortable at the time. Iran is the country that doesn't have a lot of different races, and it's like mostly Iranians and some, people from the neighboring countries. So I didn't feel like it felt like a diverse environment as much as as much as I was exposed to diversity. And then I moved on and did my master's in the same school, and I really enjoyed, those programs. Then when the time came for my PhD, I decided to try a completely different environment, but the same field of study. So I considered Canada, as a place to continue my schools, and did my PhD at McMaster University in Canada. And what was really surprising to me was the lack of female engineers at school. I was the only female student that my supervisor had, and there were very few female engineers in the department. And that was the first time that I was like the reality hit me that, oh, why are there not as many female students in the school? And then same went for race, like why are there not more diversity in school? And when you have something, you don't realize you have it until it's taken away from you. And that was when I was like, engineering is not that hard. It's not that crazy. It's not out of this world. It's just like any other field. If you have interest, you can absolutely go into that field and start exploring. And ever since, I've been really advocating for whatever people like, they should try it. They shouldn't feel intimidated by the culture or by the environment that's been around it. So that was from a female perspective, but again, because I felt that change from having it to not having it, I can totally relate. When you don't have diversity in race, gender, sexuality, or any other domain, I can totally feel how that feels when you don't have it. And I'm a big believer that diversity normalizes things and makes everybody better at what they're doing. After finishing school in Canada, I chose Canada to be the second home because I loved the school and I loved the companies that were there in Toronto. So I joined Altera. I was there for about a year or so in timing modeling team for Quartus, which is their CAD tool to design and synthesize hardware. And then after that, because of my interest in research, I joined Huawei Research Center in Toronto. I was their first employee. I was so keen looking for research opportunities. And as soon as Huawei opened the research center, I was the first employee, helped the team grow to a couple hundred engineers, and helped the hardware acceleration mission of Huawei on their cloud. So there were a couple FPGA instances on cloud that Huawei generated, just very similar to Amazon's FPGA instances. And throughout my career at Huawei, which was mainly hardware acceleration, and it was about 6 years that I was there, I was constantly monitoring Microsoft because of this specific mission that Microsoft had initiated. And Microsoft was the sole successful industrial deployment of hardware acceleration on cloud. I was always looking forward to their next papers and looking forward to ideas that came out and were published, but there was so much access I had by just looking at papers and so on. And then last year, my husband and I decided, to consider moving to the US just before the pandemic. So as soon as we decided that, I was like, okay, I gotta try this group. I've been keeping my eyes on this group, and it's been 5 years. I really, want to try. And then as soon as I contacted the team, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to join. I started in January 2020, and initially I was an individual contributor. And after a few months, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to lead a team. And now I'm hiring, similar to all other teams that are here. I am mainly hiring hardware engineers with expertise in FPGA, but the larger team is of course hiring in software, physical design, performance modeling, and infrastructure expertise. So if anybody is interested, we'll be more than happy to work with you and find the best place for you.
Excellent, excellent. So a follow-up question for you, and this is like my favorite question, of course, to ask all of our panelists. But for you personally, why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work so far?
It's a combination of factors, the intellectual density, together with, no egos in the team is what's making working here really pleasant. The team is of really high caliber, the most the smartest people I've ever seen anywhere in my schools or in previous companies I've worked for. But at the same time, people are super nice, super helpful. And as soon as you approach for help, reach out for help, everybody is there to help and support. I have never felt that ego has been a problem, which as a female, people might be more sensitive to that. So I feel very comfortable, and I feel like there is so much opportunity to learn every day. So for that, I'm really grateful.
Excellent. And where are you located, and where is most of your team located?
I'm located in Seattle.
Okay.
The office is Redmond. All of my team is in Redmond right now, but the most recent openings are opening all across the US. But we are also considering other countries as well, just thinking about that. If we have to, figure out the logistics, whether we want to move people to the US or whether we want to have them work in their own countries. That's something that needs to be figured out, but mainly in the US right now. So
one more quick follow-up question too. Sure. So if I'm a hardware engineer, I'm a software engineer, but I know we've got some hardware engineers that are watching. So if I'm a hardware engineer, what is it like to go through an interview process as a hardware engineer with Microsoft?
Sure. So for my team, there is usually an informational with a recruiter. It's like 15, 20 minutes just to get basic information from each candidate. Then there is a technical session with myself, just for me to have an understanding of the boundaries of knowledge of each candidate. Not a lot of tough technical questions, just questions about what do you know about this domain, what have you tried, what are the maximum frequencies that you've worked on, what are the circuit sizes that you've worked on, just general questions that everybody should know if they have worked on anything in this domain in the past. And then after that, if we feel like we are good fits for each other, then there is a larger interview loop that's scheduled. It's usually with 3 people, 3 of the other tech leads or managers in the larger team. And that's where people ask technical questions. It's usually about 45 minutes to an hour for each interviewer. And then after that, we will make a decision.
Excellent. So I think that would be super helpful to some of the hardware engineers that are in the audience. Zara, I'd like to thank you for being one of our panelists, and I'll ask you to hold on for our panel discussion. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So with that being said, let me introduce our next panelist, who is Skand Hercott, Senior Hardware Engineer within AHA. So Skand, if you're ready.
Hey folks, I'm Skand. I'm from Mumbai, India, which is probably the largest city In India, it's got more people than New York City and the entire country of Switzerland. So you can say I've been around a few folks. I went to undergrad at IIT Bombay, the Indian Institute of Technology. Tried to apply to this computer science department, didn't quite get in, so I became an electrical engineer instead. I studied communication systems. I found out I really liked that, so I applied for grad school in communication systems. But by the time I graduated, I was completely turned off communication systems. Don't ask me why. And so I had this offer from Cornell University, which was amazing. It was in computer architecture. It was in a lab with a number of computer architects, and I had a choice of, well, potential advisors to choose from. And it turns out that my advisor extended the offer to me just because he was intrigued by my background in communication systems, and he had this very specific project in mind that required those skills. I worked on that for a couple of years, and then Intel, who was funding that project, decided to withdraw funding. Tried a few other projects. Finally came up with some idea that ended up with me developing custom hardware for accelerating neural networks. And that's exactly the role that the team I eventually joined was working in. So yeah, that's been my journey at Microsoft. I've been here for 3 years. Right after I joined, I went up to Doug Berger, who was my skip level manager at the time. And I told him, I really think we should be building something this way. And he let me just build it. And a year later, I could present it to him, show him that it was working. And I think like that kind of speaks to the level of autonomy and the intellectual freedom that we enjoy in this team.
I think that's awesome. So for you personally, my favorite question, why do you feel Microsoft is a great place to work?
Yeah, wow. There are so many reasons. I could go on and on. I'll just pick like my top few off the top of my head. I think Microsoft as a company shares my values, and I think that's very important for me. I don't think I can work for someone who doesn't necessarily share my values. I want to feel like I'm making a meaningful impact in the world. The other thing, as Zara mentioned, I really, really, really enjoy working with some incredibly smart people who are also incredibly humble, no egos, very high EQ. So yeah, that's and also for the opportunities that Microsoft offers me, right? Like I don't think, at some point the imposter syndrome really does kick in when you're asked to build something, and sometimes I feel like screaming in a meeting, "Why are you listening to me? Like I've just graduated from school and I know nothing about this."
Awesome. So another question for you as a senior hardware engineer, what is a day in the life like for you in your role?
Yeah, so I work primarily in developing custom hardware for AI applications. So a lot of my day-to-day work involves like looking at AI models, trying to see what the performance requirements for these models are, and trying to design custom hardware that can meet those requirements. I also work very closely with the software team because they develop sort of simulators and performance models for the hardware that we're building. I sometimes provide some guidance for the people who are writing firmware for the chips that we're designing to tell them how they could use it more efficiently. And so it's really like a lot of work across the stack. Overall, I think on a regular day, or a regular week, I would probably interact with about 40 other engineers.
And what location do you work out of, and kind of what does your team look like?
Yeah, so I am in the Redmond area. But yeah, like most of our team is in the Redmond area, but I'm also working very closely with people from the Silicon Valley campus and also working out of their home offices these days.
So, quick question, and this is sort of the curiosity coming out of me as someone with a software engineering background, but I didn't have the chance to work with any hardware engineers when I worked at Bell Labs. I'm also a Bell Labs alumni. Shout out to Steve. But from a hardware, engineer perspective, we're in COVID-19 right now. As a hardware engineer, are you designing mostly, at your computer, or do you have to go into labs on campus somewhere? Or what is that like?
Yeah, so we work with FPGAs, which are field programmable gate arrays. These are basically pieces of hardware that we can just program from anywhere in the world. So I can just sit at my desk, I can write a bunch of RTL code, which is a language system Verilog and not C++, but it's basically the same idea. You write your code, you compile it, and then you can deploy it and see it working on real hardware. It's very quick turnaround times, like compared to other hardware engineering roles where you have to actually tape out silicon and wait for it to come back before you can test things.
Okay. Excellent. Skan, let me thank you for being one of our panelists, and I'll ask you to hold on to for our panel discussion. And to our candidates, if you have questions that you'd like to ask Skan, as he's a software or senior hardware engineer, if you have questions for Skan, please drop them in the chat. And then Skan, if you can keep an eye on the chat for any questions.
And hey, Will, let me just interject here and say that for some reason, a bunch of us are disabled from sending to the chat. I know Zara's like that, Jamere, me. So, maybe verbally we can get to some of the answers to some of the questions and post the LinkedIn event and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
But, sorry, I'm not ignoring you.
We're
Okay.
trying to fix right now as well, so we might get back. But yeah, thanks for saying it, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. And what I'll do to our candidates that have questions, if your question doesn't get answered, just repost the question when we get to the live Q&A during our panel discussion, and I will read the question off the chat and then ask that question to our panelists. So thanks, Steve, for that interjection. Okay, so our next panelist I'd like to introduce is Frank Johnson. Frank is a manufacturing engineer within CHIE out of Fayetteville, Georgia. So Frank, if you're ready.
Sure. So, hey, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My resume is much smaller than those that you've seen before and probably will see after. I've been at Microsoft about 2 years, but I came directly out of undergrad. And so my path has been a little bit different, but great nonetheless. So I'm from Fayetteville, Georgia. Originally grew up right outside of Atlanta. Went to Georgia Tech in the heart of Atlanta. And studied industrial and systems engineering there. And so while I was there, I had an opportunity to participate in a lot of different facets of campus, not just in major specific things, but I was able to serve on the National Society of Black Engineers, E-Board, for multiple years, able to join the best fraternity in the land, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. If there's any bros in the chat, let me know. And just a variety of other different experiences and things like that. I was able to intern a great deal. I know Steve had spoken on that, the importance of interning a little bit earlier, and that really, I think, was one of the main defining factors. And why I'm here today is just because I was able to intern and get various experiences across the board, even in undergrad. A summer here, a summer there at different companies, Goldman Sachs, GE Aviation, or even working at the Georgia Tech Research Institute, that now inform a lot of the work and experience that I have now. So like I said, I graduated in December of 2018, actually, from Georgia Tech. And then from there, I was able to join the current team that I'm on. The previous summer, so in summer of 2018, I had interned at Microsoft. It was actually in a completely different group, not cloud related, not even technical at all. But I was part of a program called Management Leaders for Tomorrow. Some of the people here may have heard of it, another great pipeline program for minorities and things like that into tech. And so I was part of that program, and Microsoft had reached out to me about an internship role in the services division, which I didn't necessarily have that much interest in working in. I wanted to do something technical, something in engineering. I didn't know what that was, but it was Microsoft. So I said, yes, I'll take the internship. And then I figured worst case scenario, I get to go and see what Seattle's like. I didn't even know it was a city before I moved out here for my internship. So I get to go explore a new place, learn some new things, and then meet new people and work at Microsoft at least for a summer. Best case scenario, I can find out other teams, other organizations, and other opportunities that are available to me, and then take advantage of those. And so the latter worked out really well. I spent at least half the summer just networking. And I worked actually in Bellevue, which is another city not far from the main Microsoft campus. But basically every Friday after work, I would drive down to the main campus and network with all sorts of other teams. So the devices team, Xbox, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where I first learned about cloud. So I was familiar with the name Azure, but wasn't really sure of what cloud hardware and such was in general. But in networking with a lot of different other employees, I got to learn about what it was. And there's a program that Microsoft does for internships specifically called Shopping, where interns are able to actually interview and talk and just meet with other teams outside of the immediate team that they're interning on and get to know about what they do and opportunities that they have. So I took full advantage of that to talk with a number of different teams, and I ended up really clicking with my current manager and the team that I'm on now under Reynald's organization in CHIE, which is Cloud Manufacturing Engineering. So we have a variety of different engineers of all types. Me as an industrial engineer, I'm kind of hybrid, mechanical, and a million other things. But there's every type of engineer on our team, from mechanical. We had a metallurgical engineer, electrical engineering, et cetera, all of the engineering disciplines. And so I was able to, like I said, really click with my manager and able to join this team. I've been here about 2.5 years, and it's a new experience every day. It's a really fast-paced organization, a very fast-paced team. And so each week is a new project in some regards. There's definitely those steady things that I have to handle, but it's a new experience each week, every time I log in. And I'm able to actually grow from that and get a lot of experience, I feel like, day in and day out. So again, happy to be here. I can't, like we said, answer anything in the chat just yet, but maybe when we get around to the actual panel questions, I can answer some.
Excellent. Frank, let me ask a follow-up question for you, which is my favorite question. In that 2.5 years that you've been there at Microsoft, what is it that you like most about working there at Microsoft?
So the best thing I would have to say is the variety of work. That's what keeps me coming back. Like I said, when I started, I was doing some certain projects, and now I'm still doing some things. We have our bread and butter. Our main focus on the team is to make sure that the hardware that gets delivered to our data centers, so the servers and racks that actually enter our data center and power the cloud, are up to the Microsoft standards. And so a lot of what we do are hardware reviews of the suppliers that actually integrate that hardware for us and making sure that it's up to spec. And so that's remained the same, but the way that we do it has definitely changed over the course of COVID. And then even auxiliary responsibilities that we have changed greatly. I've been able to travel around the globe, actually, prior to COVID. And even now that we're pretty much stuck at home for the most part, I've been able to work on some very interesting projects that involve turning a process that was once completely on site, so going and visiting factories in person and inspecting things, into something that's completely virtual. And the first step of that, of course, was kind of live streaming and video cameras, but we're looking even at more futuristic technologies and leveraging them to expand and improve the way that we do things. So the variety is definitely have to be number one for me. I get bored quickly with things, and I can't say I'm anywhere near bored yet. So
awesome. Well, we appreciate you sharing your experience, your background with us, and I'll ask you to hang on as well for our panel discussion. But with that, thank you. With that, let me introduce our next panelist, who is Darpana Munjal-Ludu, Principal Software Engineering Manager within CHIE. Darpana, if you're ready. I think you're on mute. There you go.
you think I'd get to do that after a year and a half being on Teams, right? And do that correctly. Okay, so thanks a lot for having me. Really excited to be here and share my journey with all of you. Yeah, so as he mentioned, I'm a principal firmware engineering manager. We heard a lot about software. We heard a lot about hardware. We don't have like a standard business title that says firmware. I'm very proud to be in this space, at the intersection of hardware and software. So I'm going to say proudly, I'm a firmware engineering manager. And for a background, right, it says here, the question was, where are you from? It was a difficult question for me to answer, and I'll tell you why. Because I was born in Fiji, my mom's from Fiji, and then right after that, I was living in the Middle East in Doha, Qatar, for about 7 years, or 6 or 7, something like that, early years, and then in India, in Delhi, for about I think 12 or so, and then about 15 years in Australia after that, right? And so I'm giving away my age a little bit. And then I've been here for the last about 6 years in the States. And so I've been around in my family, my husband, myself, and my 2 daughters. None of us are born in the same country. My husband's born in India. I was born in Fiji. One of my daughters is born here, and one of my daughters is born in Australia. So a little bit diverse, right? And so I understand. I've been around in places where there's different culture. Australia being one of them. Really, really diverse set of people there because everybody's an immigrant in a way, much younger than the States. And so if you're working in a technology company with engineers, you just end up having people from everywhere. So I like being in an environment where I'm surrounded by lots of different kind of perspectives and people from different countries and cultures and religion and race. It's great. And so from my experience I did a bachelor's of engineering from Victoria University in Australia. And I've been with Microsoft about a year and a half. Worked at a couple of companies. I worked in, Agilent Technologies way back when in Melbourne. And then from there, I moved to Philips, did lighting controls. So did firmware for lighting controls. So some of the controls in Burj Khalifa are running my firmware. So hopefully if you ever get to visit that in Dubai with the tallest tower, if it doesn't work, let me know. And then I went and worked on some firmware for consumer electronics in the States, doing Philips Sonic or electronic toothbrushes, so connected toothbrushes. So that was interesting, quite a lot. And then from there, I joined Microsoft about a year and a half ago. And it was actually just on the onset of the pandemic. So I remember the day of my interview, I was meant to be interviews meant to be at 9 a.m. or so. And at 8 o'clock, I got a call to say, sorry. This is what happens when you work from home. You get an interruption.
No worries. No worries.
Sorry about that. Even when you lock the door, they find a way. So yeah, I worked. I came to Microsoft the day of my interview. They told me at 8 a.m. Hey, by the way, sorry, lockdown. We're gonna have to do interviews virtually, and that's how it started. So I've been remote ever since, but unlike Steve, I've had the opportunity to go and meet my team in the last couple of weeks. I managed to kind of get in and meet my own, some of my team members. We did it in an outdoor setting, safe way, but it was great. Overall, I think I'm in the space of, I'm on the intersection, like I said, of hardware and software. And one other intersection that I'm on is the intersection between CHIE, which is Renault's organization where I work, and Steve's organization where they do forward-looking stuff. And I'm very fortunate to be in that space because that means I get to do all the pie in the sky, discussions and architecture, and get to, have mind share with those folks on Steve's team, as well as have the adrenaline rush of taking that and getting it to production. So I've been in the business of shipping product, and that is what excites me when I get something to production and see it actually run. So I like being on this side, but I don't want to be on this side without having exposure to the innovation. And I'm having that, kind of best of both worlds. It works out great for me. And in that space, in firmware, where I sit is in security. And so we are very much in the infancy and startup kind of mode in security, where we're putting out, V1 kind of solutions to secure hardware infrastructure. So you heard Steve talk about the forward-looking architecture. He has some security folks that we're working on. So we're working on some, great innovation in that space. And you heard Reynold talk about having the most trusted, secure cloud. And so how do we get there with infrastructure? And so my team is responsible for providing firmware solution, hardware firmware solution that secures the entire platform for Azure. And so it's a huge responsibility, but also a great challenge, and really exciting to kind of be here. So that's a little bit about me.
Excellent, excellent. So one follow-up question. So you joined right before COVID. So you've been there a little over a year and a half, it seems.
Yep.
So for you, what is it that you like most so far about working at Microsoft?
Yeah, I think everything that people have said before me resonates. I'm not going to repeat that, right? Innovation stands out. Security is a new space completely, so that stands out. People, absolutely, right? Both team and leadership. I think we say culture, right? And to me, I sometimes I'm an engineer, so I need tangible things. What does that mean? What does that word mean? For me, it means two things. It means being able to be myself, and I have found that I can express my opinion in any forum without fear of repercussion, right? I can go up to Renaud in a meeting and say, Renaud, I don't agree with what you're saying or your direction. And he'd be okay to say, yeah, maybe I agree with you, or I disagree with you, might agree to disagree. But I've never felt like I can't do that. And I don't think that my team feels the same. My team has ever felt that. So we have very robust, confrontational is not the right word, but robust discussions where we go back and forth on pros and cons of solution and then choose the best path forward. So I think that to me means a lot, right? That I can do that with my leaders and my team all around. So that's one aspect of culture. And Skand also talked about this, personal values. So one of the things that I feel is I'm very fortunate to have, been around the world, have this wonderful job, and be surrounded by great people and have a good family. I want to be able to contribute to society in some way, right? Have an impact in a meaningful way. And I feel like being part of Microsoft, they put their money where their mouth is. One of the things that really, really inspires me is the Give campaign they have every year. It's in October coming up. And it's a time where all of us kind of get together around the organization and give to, give our time, our money, whatever work, whatever you're passionate about, any cause, right? Whether it's eradicating, malaria in a country, providing research for vaccinations, or, hunger, or, women, education for women or girls, or whatever it might be, anywhere around the world, you have a cause, you want to contribute, you contribute. And Microsoft contributes equally to that, right? They even match your volunteer hours. It's a month, and there's so much energy around that 1 month in this space that it really energizes me. It makes me feel like I'm in a place in an organization that's a responsible citizen that wants to do good for the world. I think last year we reached something like 200 billion. Don't quote me on that, but some huge number like that. And I think for the year it was like 190 million or something, right? So it was impressive. It was very, very nice to see. So that resonates with me personally, with my values, right? I get the opportunity to do that, and I get to spend time at work doing that fun stuff as well, and feeling like I contributed in some way. Another reason is, sustainability is important, and Microsoft has pledged to be, carbon neutral by 2030, and they're amazing initiatives that they're trying to do in this space to kind of get to that goal. So all of those things kind of mean, hey, I get to work on exciting stuff that I studied and I enjoy. I work with great people. I get to contribute in a meaningful way to society, and I'm part of an organization that's a responsible citizen out there trying to do good in the world. So it's a win-win-win all around. I can't it's hard to find another place to go.
Sounds very fulfilling.
It is, yeah.
So Darpana, thank you for being one of our panelists. And to the rest of our panelists, right now we're ready to transition into our panel discussion and live Q&A. To basically the rest of the event, what I want to do is I want to take some questions from our candidates from the chat that may not have been answered. So to our candidates, if you want to drop a quick question in the chat, I will present that question to our panelists. And to our Microsoft team on the panel, feel free to turn your video on, and then you can toggle yourself on and off with mute to answer questions. So let me take down my slides.
Hey, Will.
Yes.
And if we also could let maybe Steve and Zara go, I know there are questions in the chat and other comments they want to make, but we are a little bit frustrated because we haven't been able to figure out how to. Some of us can't type. There may be others as well. So if you have been having that issue and there's anything that you want to say, comment on that was in the chat, I think we should probably give a few minutes for that to be addressed.
Sure.
First. Thank you.
I can go really quick. Like as I recall, I saw a question about, hey, do you guys use GPUs for your AI? And the answer for that is, yeah, by the thousands. So we definitely use lots of GPUs for general purpose computing as well as for AI. There's another question about, are you building your own chips? And are you building them for infrastructure things? Are you building for AI, et cetera? Look at what Google's doing with TPUs. And to that, I can say that I can't really say what we're building, but yeah, we are building chips. We've got one of Ronald and my sister organizations called SES, Silicon Engineering Solutions, is over 1,000 people building chips. You can speculate as to what they're used for.
Excellent.
And I can't post in my LinkedIn address, but just go to LinkedIn and say, Steve Scott, Cray, Microsoft, and I'll pop up.
And he'll pop up. Ronald, did you have any questions that you saw that you wanted to answer, or do you want me to go ahead and jump into the panel discussion?
You can jump into the panel discussion. I'm special, as Steve mentioned. I can post into the chat sessions. I've been posting.
Okay. So actually, my first question is for Steve and Ronald. So I'll default it to Ronald first. And that is, I noticed you both have backgrounds working at different companies. And what are some of the differences that you've noticed now that you've joined Microsoft as compared to some of the other companies that you've worked for? And I'll default that one to Ronald first.
Sorry, Will, I was just posting a thing. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Sure, no problem.
Pay attention to you now.
So based on some of the other companies that you've worked for and now having joined Microsoft, what are some of the differences between, now working at Microsoft and some of the other companies that you've worked for?
Yeah, so the first thing, and we've talked quite a bit about, is the culture. Microsoft has a culture that I really like, which is, we talked about it being empathetic, bringing your best authentic self to work. It kind of continues to focus on kind of making it a great place to work. The other aspect, I would say within Microsoft is that there is, just given the scale and the work that is being done, there's so much opportunity that you can find almost exactly what you are looking for, right? Which is a huge plus in my mind.
For sure. Okay, so let me ask this next question to Zara. So Zara, what advice can you offer candidates that are interviewing with Microsoft to maximize their chances of being hired?
So of course, the basics are the technical aspects. Right? If the candidate has sufficient technical background, the rest is to really be curious along the way and be a nice person. That really relates to what Steve and Ronald have been saying. Like, we don't have a lot of ego here, and if people feel like the candidate is easy to work with and they're curious and they're willing to learn and grow, that's exactly what we're looking for. Nothing extraordinary. We're not looking for, some people with like extraordinary technical capabilities. Just have the basic background and come with the best intentions, willing to help the team as like the whole body to be successful, not just on individual levels. Just help others get successful, and others will help you get successful. And that's how the whole team will be successful in their mission.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Zara. So for this next question, let me pose this one to Skan. So Skan, for you, what was the interview process like as you joined the company there at Microsoft?
Yeah, it was pretty much as Zara mentioned, so I had like a quick information call with my hiring manager. That went well, and then I came in for a full day on-site interview loop. And yeah, that was it. It was a bit of whiteboarding, a bit of just like general questions. I don't think Microsoft hires for the specific team and the specific role. So like the questions were very much pertinent to the role I would be doing. They weren't like brain teasers or the kind of like interview questions that I think have got a bad rap in the tech industry. It wasn't like solve this problem that you will never have to do in real world. Yeah.
And then I saw a question that was asked in the chat, related to how much, programming or software engineering work does a hardware engineer need to be familiar with in order to be a hardware engineer at Microsoft? And I think you answered that question in the chat, but for the benefit of anyone that may have missed it, if you can touch on that.
Yeah, as I said, the interview process is really tailored for the role. And obviously, I mean, if you are a hardware engineer, I think one of the things in our team is that we don't silo ourselves based on our titles. So even though I am a hardware engineer, I do sometimes just work on software because it's fun. And yeah, so if you know programming and if you want to learn as well, it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so let me pose this next question to Frank, but I think this is a question that might warrant multiple perspectives. And that question is, do you feel that you can be yourself culturally speaking at Microsoft? And then what are some of the non-advertised benefits that you've come to know working at Microsoft? So I'll default that one to Frank, and then if anyone else wants to add in, that'd be great.
So one of the great things about Microsoft is that we have an initiative called Employee Resource Groups, or ERGs. I'm actually the coordinator of it, so it's been a really great experience for me. And to answer your question, yeah, I do feel that I'm able to be myself, and part of that is in no small part due to ERGs. And so the purpose of ERGs, Employee Resource Groups, is to essentially establish communities for minorities or other groups that don't necessarily have that representation at Microsoft, or particularly in the tech field. So for me specifically, being a Black man, Blacks at Microsoft is an ERG group that I ascribe to. And there's a lot of great events that make me feel and be able to connect with people in my community, which has been fantastic. One of the opportunities that I had actually over the summer was for Juneteenth. We were able to actually celebrate Black achievements in all different fields. And so not only technical, but culturally, culinarily, and all of that. And so I was able to actually lead a room on music. And so Black's contribution to music, particularly American music in the modern era. And so I was able to put together a presentation. I DJ as a hobby, and so it was extra fun to me to bring this side of myself to work. But I was able to talk about just the African American involvement and really contribution to gospel, jazz, hip hop, of course, and house music, which a lot of people don't know. But house music, actually came out of Chicago. It was actually a gay Black community there that kind of started it. And so that was really interesting and great for me because I was able to learn a lot and bring a side of myself to work that, usually doesn't get seen when I'm reviewing hardware and things like that, and really share that not only with my community, immediate community at Microsoft, but out to the overall CHIE and larger communities.
Excellent. And what kind of music do you DJ?
Open format. So I mean, I started as hip hop, R&B, and all that, but the more I listen to music, the more diverse my taste grows.
Sweet, cool. All right, so this next question I'm going to default to Darpana, and that is, I noticed that you mentioned that you were onboarded right either before or in the midst of COVID-19, and then after you were onboarded, what was that like coming on board to the company during the pandemic? Because I imagine we've had some people that have been hired from some of our events post-pandemic as well. And so there may be some folks that get hired from this event as well that may have to onboard in a similar fashion. So what was that like for you? And then how did it affect the way you worked with your team?
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Will. It was hard. I think that I can say that it was hard because I like to meet people. That's just who I am in general. There's a time where I would like my silence in my own space, but for the most part, I think I'm effective when I'm with people, right? There is a sense of collaboration, especially when you're a manager. I think there's, a sense of energy you can create when you're in with teams. And as, Steve mentioned, there are events you can organize and you just get to know your people. When you get to know your people by being there, not talking about work, I think work becomes easier. So I think that was the hard part, creating that energy virtually and being new. However, having said that, Teams, which Microsoft does, made it very easy to kind of onboard in the best way possible. So that was one thing. And then the other thing was I got really good support from the people who hired me, right? So there were a couple of folks who reached out to me during the, to kind of come on board and join Microsoft. And I feel like they really invested in my success. So I think Zara mentioned this, right? You come on board, people will, you help others and they help you. But I felt like just people helped me all around, right? Right from my manager, my leaders, Steve's organization. I work with some people there. In fact, one of the people from Steve's organization, who I respect highly, he hired me, and so he's really supported me. I've had people in the rest of CHIE and Reynolds' organization really support my onboarding with the technical aspects, with the organizational aspects, processes. So all of that. In addition, my team, who was without a manager for about 9 months or 8 months or so, like directly, they had my boss leading them, of course. They were super welcoming and very accommodating and spent time to help me on board, like Steve mentioned when he came on board, right? People helped him out. So I think all of that combined really helped me kind of feel like I was part of the family, even though I hadn't met them up until recently. So that was fantastic, I think, overall. Just people helping people out, I think, mainly. And then there was technology to support it.
Awesome. I remember actually the first event that we hosted with Microsoft, once we stopped doing events physically, the team that was hiring was Microsoft Teams, and we leveraged Microsoft Teams for the event. So when you speak to technology, it slipped right in there. So let me thank all of you as our panelists. We've got a couple of minutes left before our event is over. So what I want to do is I want to give our candidates some idea of next steps and what the process will end up being like for the candidates. And then I will let Steve close us out with sort of a final word of encouragement for our candidates. So Jesse, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on the process, or I can touch on it as far as making sure we have the candidates' latest resumes. But Jesse, if you have anything to add now, or if you want to drop it in the chat, I can speak to it.
Yeah, the chat's not working for me either. But essentially, part of the process is make sure that your most updated resume is in Will's hands, preferably by tonight or tomorrow morning. Will's going to send over the resumes. The Azure team will review them. And if selected, you'll be contacted for a technical phone screen for either a hardware engineer role or a software engineer role.
Excellent. Thanks, Jesse. So to our candidates, make sure I have your latest resume. And the way you do that is you submit it, just go to our website, hbcuconnect.com/Microsoft. That's it. That'll take you to the registration page for this event, and that will allow you to upload your resume. Then my team will make sure we have a resume for everyone. Then we will share that with the Microsoft team, AHA and CHIE, within 24 hours. So I would highly encourage you, if you're interested in interviewing, submit your latest resume tonight. It should only take you 5 minutes to submit it on the form. And here's the other thing I want to say. A lot of people wonder, what happens after the event. Maybe if you don't hear anything. But don't worry. Like there've been people that have attended multiple Microsoft events, and maybe the first event they attended, I'm thinking of one specific individual. He attended an event like in March or April of last year, and he didn't get onboarded or hired until almost a year later, right? So people are getting hired from these events. Microsoft is going through the resumes. They're reaching out to people as their needs align with your talent and your skills. So right now, you might not be a perfect fit for the needs that are available, but in the future, if they have your latest resume, one of the recruiters may reach out to you, have that phone screen, and then invite you in for an interview. And then even after you interview, you might not immediately get an offer or immediately get a role, but it has happened that, you know, after you've gone through that interview process, that you get that call in the future and are invited to meet the team, see if there's a fit, and then you may get an offer. So that happens all the time. So do not be discouraged if you don't hear something right away. But those of you that are interested, like I said, get us your latest resume. Now, with that being said, I'll follow up with those instructions as well via email. I'll follow up with the video from the event and a post-event survey, so you can give us your feedback on how we can make these events better. But I would like to pass it back to one of our keynotes, Steve, to close with any final thoughts and words of encouragement for our candidates. Steve.
Yeah, I guess I will just say, you know, you've heard it for the last hour and a half here. I think Microsoft is a great place to work. I think you're hearing from everybody. They you know, love the culture, the environment. Lots of different areas to work in, looking for lots of different people. You know, your specific deep skills are not necessarily the thing. We are looking for people with a growth mindset, people that are inquisitive, that want to ask questions, that want to learn. I want to thank all of you for, you know, taking the effort to connect in to this meetup, to express some interest, to be curious about Microsoft. And we are always looking for great people. So I hope we find some great matches. I've heard great things about some of the matches that we found in previous HBCU Connect events. So I'm confident that there'll be some coming out of this one. Please go ahead, apply, look for things that look interesting to you. Reach out, go through the process that Will just talked about, and I look forward to welcoming some of you to our family as soon as we can make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all of our panelists. We can't do these events without your volunteering your time and your experience to share with our candidates. And to our candidates, a sincere thank you from myself and my team for coming to this event, because without you guys coming to the events, guess what? We can't do these events, right? And so, like I said, Microsoft has had a long track record of partnering with not only HBCU Connect, but other organizations like NSBE and other diverse organizations where they've been intentionally pulling in talent from different communities. So kudos to Microsoft, but thank you to our candidates for volunteering the time to come as well and learn more. And hopefully I hear some good news from some of you that have gone through the interview process and received an offer. So thank you to everyone, and that concludes our event. Have a good evening, and go Cowboys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Go Cowboys.
I liked you, Will. Go Cowboys.